Have y'all ever thought about starting your own podcast but thought it would be too complicated? If your answer to that question is yes, let me tell you about Anchor. Anchor is the easiest way to start a quality podcast. First of all, it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from any device. And on top of that, Anchor is owned by Spotify, so you have access to a full library of sound effects, background music, transitions, and even full songs that you can add in. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, and it will hook you up with sponsors so you can make money on your podcast. It's literally everything you could ever need to start a podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm to get started. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the Raw Prospect Podcast, everyone. Today is March 24th now. It's been 2 weeks since our last episode. It's episode 61. And welcome back, everyone. I'm really excited. It's been a minute since we've been able to talk sports. Michael went on his spring break trip. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit. But yeah, it's been a long 2 weeks, man. I had a lot of golf qualifying I was doing, and it was just a wild 2 weeks. So I'm happy to be back, getting that content out to you guys. And we can just talk about your trip to Florida, man, or we can just get right into it. What do you want to do?
Yeah, I'm happy to be back as well. Hello, world. We are back after a 2-week hiatus. Thank you, Amy, for the always great introduction. Welcome to episode 61 of the Raw Prospect Podcast. We are amidst a very busy time, to say the least, in the sports world. If you think about it, NFL free agency, that's going to be included in today's episode. NFL draft season's right around the corner. If it's not already here for some people, we'll have a bunch of content on that coming up here soon. We got the NBA trading deadline tomorrow. We'll talk about that at the very end of the episode today. We have MLB opening day a week from tomorrow. So we got some MLB stuff that we'll be getting to here over the next week to kind of preview the season. We have major season in golf upcoming with the Masters fast approaching in about 2 weeks. So we have that coming up. And we are in the middle of one of the more crazy sporting events we get every year, and that's March Madness. And that's how we're going to kick off today's show with the winners and losers of the first weekend, the first and second rounds of the tournament. Now, as far as my break and my trip, it went well. We went to Sanibel Island, Florida, which is on the south. It's an island off the southwest coast of Florida with pretty beaches. I was there for about 4 or 5 days with my cousin, and we were just chilling on the beach. We watched some of the we left on Friday, which was the first day of the tournament. So we were there for the first 4 games on Thursday, but we weren't there. It would have been fun to be there for some of the opening games of the tournament, but we weren't. But it was a great trip. Everyone stayed healthy, which was the most important thing. And it was a good break from school, which I know a lot of schools didn't get. I was lucky to get that. So I was very appreciative to Jay Hartzell, the university president here at UT Austin, for still giving us that luxury after we got that entire week off due to the snowstorms and all that. So, but as a consequence, it's a very busy time in school right now for me. I had a test yesterday, and I have another quiz coming up on Friday, and then I have another test next week. So in the midst of all this, I do get hammered with some work here, but it's all right. It's nothing I haven't already been through, but I don't want to make this introduction too long. So with that, let's just get into the first segment of the show, which is the winners and losers of the first weekend of March Madness.
Right.
So do you want to kick us off here?
Yeah. what a crazy weekend, man. I'm gonna pull up my bracket here. There was just so many upsets that were just, I don't know, like so hard to predict. The only thing I really got right, the only prediction I really got right, that was in terms of like the huge upsets was Loyola Chicago beating Illinois. I saw that they were second in the country in defensive efficiency, and I was like, yeah, I think they should be a higher seed than what they were. And then that ended up coming to fruition. And actually, after that day, my bracket was at 99.7%. One day later, it is sitting at 33%. Just insane. Wow. One of the big things that I took away from the first weekend is just how disappointing the Big 12 and the Big 10 were. Obviously we did our conference rankings, like we ranked all of the conferences, and we obviously we disregarded the other conferences in terms of the predicting the conference tournaments. We did only the Big 10 and the Big 12, assuming that they were the top of the tier, which I think they were for the most part, but I just think the gap between the Power 5 teams and the mid majors this year specifically, and also just in general, it's getting smaller and smaller. And this year it's almost undecipherable. Like they're all very similar in terms of talent. There's no Duke this year with 5 top 5 picks coming up. Like there's no team like that. But really that's pretty rare to begin with now, just in general. And a lot of guys are in the G League. They're going to different parts of the world to play. And I think this is going to be the new movement now. March Madness is going to be more and more random, I think. I think this is the future. I think it's going to be good for the tournament, but maybe not good for the regular season.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback off that point to start I did a short list, but a list nonetheless of winners and losers, just general winners and losers. And one of the losers I had was the Big 10 and the Big 12 conferences. These were, I think, the two best conferences, pretty much the entirety of the regular season and throughout conference tournaments. You know, teams like Baylor, Iowa, all the elite teams that we were talking about throughout the regular season were pretty much compiled into these two conferences. In the Big 12, you had 7 out of the 10 teams make it. In the Big 10, you had a bunch of other teams make it. I think it was like 8 or 9 teams make it. So, but now the Big 12 did well in the first round. They went undefeated with the exception of Texas losing to Abilene Christian. So I think that's a 6-1 record. But then they fell apart in the second round with only Baylor advancing to the Sweet 16. Same thing with the Big 10. Illinois lost to Loyola Chicago. They were highly regarded as the best team in the Big 10. And now the hopes of the Big 10 of snapping the longest title drought of 20 years. No Big 10 team has won a title for 21 years. So those hopes rest on the shoulders of the Michigan Wolverines, who were the only Big 10 team to advance to the Sweet 16. And a lot of people were down on Michigan coming into the tournament, given that they're missing one of their best players, and they had lost a couple of games down the stretch that they probably shouldn't have lost. So you look at that, only getting 2 teams from the Big 10 and the Big 12 to the second weekend of the tournament. I don't think a lot of people would have predicted that coming in, but that's just the nature of this tournament. It's a 1-game elimination tournament. As you mentioned, the playing field is more level now than it's ever been before. with the mid majors and the Power Five teams. So if you have one bad night, like the Texases of the world or any other team does, you're gone, just like that. So the Big Ten and the Big 12, while I do think they still were the best conferences throughout the regular season, it's a level playing field once you get to the elimination tournament, and that's what happened. Now it rests on Baylor and Michigan, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Those are two really good teams, but that's what it is. And then before I let you kind of speak and piggyback off what I'm saying, one of my winners was just the double-digit seeds. You had 9 double-digit seeds win their first-round matchups, which is a tournament record. And you had 4 of those seeds advance to the Sweet 16. In case you don't know, the 11th seed in the East, the UCLA Bruins, who were the first 4 games against Michigan State, they've won 3 consecutive games, and they're in the Sweet 16. The Syracuse Orange, the 11th seed in the Midwest, they're in the Sweet 16 from the ACC. The Oregon State Beavers, another Pac-12 team, a 12th seed in the Midwest. They destroyed Tennessee to get here, and they flew through Oklahoma State, which was very surprising. So they're in the Sweet 16. And then 15 seed in the story, by far, the best Cinderella story since Florida Gulf Coast in 2013. The 15 seed in the South, Oral Roberts, defeating Ohio State and Florida to get here. So 4 double-digit seeds advancing to the Sweet 16 for just the 3rd time in history. The other 2 times that has happened, 1999 and 2011, which was the year that UConn went on that incredible run with Kemba Walker, if I'm not mistaken. So it's just the nature of this tournament. And you could honestly include Loyola Chicago in that kind of group of teams. But they play a lot better than what their seed is. They're playing a lot better than what their seed suggests. So it's been a crazy couple of days. I watched a ton of basketball, but I'll let you piggyback off that. And then I have 2 more points I want to add.
Well, another thing that I really wanted to hone in here was the fact that I don't think the Big 12 played bad, so to speak. The only team where I really felt disappointed with in terms of the Big 12 teams was Texas. I think Oklahoma State, I think they just got beat. They played a good game. I think their style of play was so reliant on switching their defensive schemes and being able to keep teams off balanced. And going against elite offensive teams like Oregon State, who put up 80 points on them, they were just able to shoot out of everything they threw out of, and they just hit their shots. They were just red hot. And I don't know, man. This year, it was so. I think it was a product of some of these teams. They didn't have an out of conference schedule, and I think maybe some of these teams, they were so comfortable. I know some of these conferences, their schedules are tough. We discussed this a lot on past episodes, but I think playing similar opponents gets you in like this kind of this bubble. And I think going out of that bubble, you see different teams with different styles a little bit more. And maybe some of these teams were just caught off guard. I think that was the case with West Virginia, with them losing to, who was it? I think it was
Syracuse,
right. I don't think there's any team that runs a 2-3 zone in all of the Big 12. So that just goes to my point,
right?
In saying this year being so unique with these teams only playing in conference, I think it really burst their bubble a little bit, so to speak.
Right. Yep. I had two more I wanted to look at here in terms of winners and losers. I'll start with the loser, and it's kind of a silly one, but what are the kind of the two things we admire or like about March Madness? Well, they're the upsets and then the last-second shots of the buzzer beaters, the crazy moments that we see. And surprisingly, through 52 games of the tournament, we have yet to see a buzzer beater, meaning like a game-winning shot. Now, we have seen all the upsets in the world, and we have seen kind of two similar situations or adjacent, what I call adjacent buzzer beater shots. One was the first game of the first round where one of Virginia Tech's players hit a three-point shot to force OT at the last second. And the other was, of course, Joe Pleasant, the forward for Abilene Christian, hitting the two free throws to beat Texas. But nonetheless, we haven't seen an actual buzzer beater in regulation to win a game. And that's just been kind of a surprise because it's been kind of a staple of March Madness for so long. But maybe it's coming. Maybe it's coming this weekend. That's not to say it still can't happen. It definitely can. But it's just kind of a surprise to me. And the biggest winner to me, and it's pretty obvious, has to be the Pac-12. The Pac-12 Conference and Bill Walton, who I'm sure is just over his I don't know,
loopy brain
right now. Yeah, exactly. In case y'all don't know, the Pac-12 advanced 4 teams to the Sweet 16. They comprise of 25% of the Sweet 16 field. The 4 teams that will be there. You have the USC Trojans, who, oh my God, might have had the most impressive performance of any team in the first or second round with their total, I don't know what you call it, dispatch or domination of the Kansas Jayhawks. The 60 in the West, they're going to the Sweet 16, and they will face their Pac-12 counterparts in the Oregon Ducks, who are advancing to the Sweet 16 4th time in 5 tournaments under their current coach, which is pretty incredible. They're a familiar face here. They're the 7th seed in the West, and they will face each other for the right to go on and probably face Gonzaga in the Elite Eight. You have the UCLA Bruins, who I mentioned earlier, coming out of the first 4, 11th seed in the East. And then you have the Oregon State Beavers, who I also mentioned earlier, a 12th seed in the Midwest, who were actually picked by many to finish last in the Pac-12 this year. But they won their last couple games. They made a run through the Pac-12 tournament, and here they are. They got a pretty good draw, if you ask me, and here they are in the Sweet 16. It's the first time the Pac-12 has sent 4 teams to the Sweet 16 in 20 years, since 2001. Not only did Pac-12 teams win during the first weekend, they dominated. Pac-12 teams went 9-1. They actually went 10-1, but we're excluding the fact that Oregon advanced by virtue of COVID the first round. I really didn't count that as a victory, but you can if you want. They went 9-1, and they won games by an average margin of 16.3 points. So total domination by the Pac-12. And I have to admit, the last thing I'll say for the segment is I have to admit my ignorance towards, and many fans and media, ignorance towards the Pac-12 Conference. Some of it is just people don't want to stay up late and watch those games. Some of it's just that, and some of it is just lack of knowledge, and you got to be more, I guess, on your toes and knowing that this is still a very, very good conference, even, in its weak years. And it hasn't been great for the Pac-12, let's be honest. But this year, they're making it happen. If you look at it, the Pac-12 this year had 65 players on opening day NBA rosters this year. 65 players. That's third among all conferences, just behind the ACC and the SEC, but ahead of the Big 12 and the Big 10, who we raved about all year long. Yet the Pac-12 had 21 more players in the NBA coming into the season than those two conferences did. So it's just, I think we got to be a little bit more respectful, or at least I do, of the Pac-12. And, good for them. We've been waiting for this. So maybe this gives people a wake-up call. But we'll see how they fare. I'm really excited for that USC and Oregon matchup. That's going to be a really fun one. But we'll get into that in our next episode. So that's all I have to say for this segment. If you have anything to add, go ahead.
And adding to what you said on the Pac-12, they did this without their regular headliner in Arizona. Arizona didn't even make the tournament. Normally, Arizona has been the not really a blue blood, but the team from the Pac-12 in recent memory. And obviously they're going through their NCAA stuff. But I just did not foresee the depth of this conference. There's just no way I could have. I think it was just a combination of bias towards the Big 12 and the Big 10 and just not wanting to stay up late, obviously, like you said.
Right. 5 teams made it from the Pac-12. And 4 of them got to the Sweet 16. The only team that didn't was Colorado, and they had to face Florida State, a team I had making the Final Four originally. So, I mean, they ran into a buzzsaw in Florida State. So, it's unfortunate, but they played really well in their first round game. So, just goes to show you. So, congratulations to the Pac-12. It's going to be hopefully a fantastic finish to the tournament. We're hoping to do a Sweet 16 bracket maybe before Saturday. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But with that, let's move on to NFL free agency. Why not?
Right. I'm really excited for this. We're going to be covering the teams that we felt were polarizing, the teams that we're really excited about, and the teams that we're not so excited about. If your team's not on this list, that doesn't mean your team did really good or really bad. It just means they might just be in the middle. They kind of stayed where they are, which is okay, So the teams we will be covering are the Bucks, the Giants, the Colts. No, not the Colts. The Jets, the Titans, and the Patriots, Chargers, and Raiders. I read Colts when I put cuts instead of I don't know. My bad for that. But we're going to start here with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
So yes, A+ offseason for the Super Bowl champion. Yeah. Basically what they did is they did some creative cap maneuvering, some very creative cap maneuvering, and they re-signed many of their key pieces from last year's Super Bowl team. The biggest being outside linebacker Shaq Barrett. They locked him up long term. He was just an absolute game wrecker throughout the season and in the playoffs. That goes without saying. They franchise tagged wide receiver Chris Godwin. Very good number 2 receiver behind Mike Evans. One of the best number 2s in the league, if you ask me. Very important move there. They bring back Tom Brady's best friend, tight end Rob Gronkowski, who played well in the playoffs and caught was it 1 or 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl? I don't remember exactly.
I think it was 2.
It's been a long time since 2. It's been a long time, or it feels like it's been a long time since that game happened. But they bring back him. They also get back a key piece on defense, the leader of that defense, and middle linebacker Levante. They signed him to like a 2 or 3 year deal. And today they bring back defensive tackle Ndamukong Suh. The only two missing pieces they have left are running back Leonard Fournette and wide receiver Antonio Brown. I'm not sure they'll get both, but I think they'll get at least one of them back. And if you were to ask me who they need more, I would say to you it'd be Leonard Fournette. I've seen Ronald Jones be hurt, and I've also seen Leonard Fournette be hurt. But chances are if you have both, one will be healthy at one time and the other may not. They need some depth at that running back position. And if you have the luxury, sure, bring back Antonio Brown too. But if not, their offense will be just fine without him. But it's regardless, it's an A+ offseason. And, I think they're one of the few teams in the league that can go into this upcoming draft and just draft the best player available. Like, they don't really have to draft for a specific need. They don't have many holes in this roster, if at all. So they're just drafting to add depth to the roster. That's basically what they're doing. They're going to draft probably the best player available and see what happens. Add depth to this roster. That's probably their goal. And I should mention that they also restructured Tom Brady's contract again. So another team-friendly move by the GOAT himself and Tom Brady, just like he did with New England for so many years, restructuring that contract, freeing up some money, and letting the Bucs bring back this corpse of players that won them the Super Bowl. So for me, it gets an A+. They don't necessarily get better, but I think they do get like from a personnel standpoint. But I think they do get better, being that this team's been together for a year. It's going to be their second year in the system, Brady's second year in the system, and that's typically when things start to click. I think they're going to be better this year. Their division, I think, gets a little worse. The Saints are going to regress some because they're in cap hell and they've had to cut so many players. The Panthers, they'll be viable. I'm not sure they'll be a playoff team, but they still have Teddy Bridgewater and some good players there. And then you have the Falcons, who I think could finish second in this division. They just got to add some pieces to that defense.
Right.
But we'll see. I think the Bucs are by far and away the best team in this division right now. So A+, A+, A+.
Right. Actually, from what you said earlier with the running backs, I'd actually say they would want Antonio Brown back more than Leonard Fournette. I guess we got like a difference in perspectives there. But for me, I'd say running back, you'd want someone that can catch the ball out of the backfield anyway. So I think you could get a guy like Travis Etienne in the draft, someone who can go out of the backfield and catch passes. That's something that Tom Brady does so well, and you don't really have that guy right now. So I think Leonard Fournette is expendable, but I think really both of them are expendable depending on how much money they want. If Antonio Brown is asking for too much, you have Tyler Johnson and you have they have another slot guy. I forgot his name, but Scotty Miller. But
yep.
Moving on, though, Chris Godwin, obviously, the franchise tag, really good move there. They did not want him to hit free agency because he was going to get top dollar, and they would not have been able to match whatever deal was going to be thrown at him because there was high demand for Chris Godwin. I think, obviously, this year was a down year, but I think his value. Teams know how good this guy is. Like he is one of the best. And then Shaq Barrett, that was a bonus. I don't think anyone was expecting them to bring back Godwin and Barrett. Everyone expected them to get one or the other, and they got both. That's a huge win. And then they get Suh, They're keeping this core of guys together, like you said, and they really weren't supposed to win the Super Bowl last year. They basically won by they just so happened to get hot at the right time. They got a good matchup in the wild card round, and they got some momentum, and that was it. This team, the talent just took over, and the chemistry was good enough, and then boom, they won the Super Bowl. This year, if they stay healthy, the chemistry is going to be even better. They're going to get presumably a more normal offseason. I don't know what the plan is there yet with the virus situation, but a presumably more normal offseason. And you're going to get another year of chemistry with everybody, and they know how to win this time around. They know how to do it. They were such a long transition period early in the year, but where I remember Tom Brady, like every other play, was yelling on the sidelines, just like trying to get his guys pumped up and getting to playing the right way. But once his leadership fully took hand over this team, it was a done deal. Their talent is just so good, and they're going to be even better next year because of the chemistry stuff. But that's it for them. I think that's it. That's A+ for me as well.
Right.
So moving on. Oh yeah. Moving on to the New York Giants. I'll start off with this one, I guess, since you went first on the other one.
Okay.
They signed Leonard Williams, defensive tackle, to a 3-year, $63 million deal with $46 million guaranteed. And of course, they picked up Kenny Galladay from the Lions, and they signed John Ross as well. They cut Golden Tate, and they cut Kevin Zeitler. Kevin Zeitler was the big one there. Not sure why they did that. He wasn't an elite offensive lineman, so to speak, but he was their best offensive lineman on their team. And they're already questionable up front to begin with. So I don't know why they made that move. And the Ravens just snatched him up right away, just showing how the rest of the league sees him. So not sure why they didn't just trade him so they could get a little bit of value, but I guess we'll never know. Yeah. Going back to the Leonard Williams thing, though, I have a lot to say. So I think it was a bit of an overpay. So he's going to get paid $23 million a year. I mean, that's Aaron Donald money. That's Chris Jones money. That's up there with the elite defensive tackles. If you look at his numbers throughout his career, he's typically a 6-sack guy. That's pretty much his average. And last year, he went up to 13 sacks. Maybe they know something I don't, and they think he can continue this, which would be fantastic, obviously. But to me, I see him as someone who's maybe a step below a guy like Grady Jarrett or Chris Jones, and obviously Aaron Donald is a step above everybody. But I still think this was a bit of an overpay. I think there were guys on the market that you could pay maybe 13 to 14 million for, to where you could spend the rest of that money on other parts of this roster that need help. There's still a lot of holes on this team. I think the results they got last year from that defense was mostly because of the coaching job Joe Judge was able to do. They need to add more talent. And I think this was a really hefty price for a team that was already running low on cap space. But the Kenny Galladay signing, I really like that move. I mean, obviously, any team that was going to get Kenny Galladay, we knew from the jump that it was going to be a win, no matter what the price was. When you can get a receiver like Kenny Galladay, that's a win. But for this team specifically, you give Daniel Jones a guy who has a huge catch radius. He can go get the football on the deep throws, anything you need, and in the red zone as well. And hopefully having a safety blanket and a someone who's reliable like that on their team will make Daniel Jones feel a little bit more comfortable on the field and maybe bring down the turnovers a little bit. We saw the Lions offense with Kenny Galladay on the field. They were really efficient. They were pretty good, actually. They were pretty good offensively with him out there. But with him off the field, they were just anemic. They struggled like mightily. And that just shows how talented this guy is. So good move there. And John Ross, that's a low risk, high reward type of guy. He has a lot of speed. You get the guy the ball in space maybe 3 times a game, see what he can do with it. And it's a cheap deal. So if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. So I think it was a solid offseason, a bit of an overpay for Leonard Williams. Leonard Williams. And then a good move to sign Kenny Galladay. But overall, I give it like a B to B plus.
Yeah, I think it's a solid offseason for the New York Giants. I give it a B plus. I like moves they made on both sides of the ball, but I do have my concerns on each. You talk about, they went big game hunting for the best receiver available, bringing in Kenny Galladay. I think it's a good value. I think they got him at a good price relative to what, maybe if he didn't get it and took it's been kind of a weird year for the wide receiver free agent market. We saw Juju get not nearly what his market value suggested he should get, and some other receivers not get what they wanting. But he got what he wanted, I guess, and they get him on a long-term deal, which is great. And he significantly upgrades their offensive weaponry. So you add a guy like that. I do have my injury concerns with him. Hopefully he can stay healthy. He only played, I think, 5 or 6 games last season. That's a concern, but the talent is not. He's one of the more talented receivers in the league. And he talked about that catch radius, one of the more impressive 50-50 guys that we have in this league. So, and not a lot of people know that because not a lot of people watch the Detroit Lions play. Let's be honest. The John Ross signing, it's a cheap deal. It's more of and Sterling Shepard are injury prone. So it's kind of more of a depth signing. Guy with speed, he's a burner. Maybe he can catch a defense off guard every once in a while and hit him deep. And you can get the ball in his hands, see what he can do. More of a depth signing, though. I like it. But, shouldn't make too much of an impact. They also added a move I really liked was adding Kyle Rudolph, another veteran tight end to go along with Evan Ingram, a guy that's very reliable in the red zone. When he was in Minnesota, and he can still play. He's not like the Greg Olsen type. He's still right there, like maybe not in his prime, but he's right there. He's still got a couple really good years of football left in him. I really like that move. So basically what the Giants are telling you, one of my favorite radio hosts in the sports business, Colin Cowherd, even though I don't agree with everything he says, and sometimes I really disagree with the opinions that he has. He said he made a really good point. He says the Giants, they're putting Daniel Jones on the clock. This is what his third full season. The Giants are saying, okay, we're giving you a great receiving core, possibly top 5, top 6 in the league with Kenny Galladay, a great number 2 in Darius Slayton, a good number 3 in Sterling Shepard, provided that they're healthy. John Ross, we're giving you Saquon back. We're giving you 2 good tight ends and Evan Ingram. And this is like the Browns, right? This is like Baker Mayfield, the Browns. But he said they're putting Daniel Jones on the clock, and they're going to know by like Thanksgiving, depending on whether this Giants team is in the hunt, they're going to know if Daniel Jones is the guy or not. I think that was a really good point made by him, a really good insight. And he has sources on this type of stuff. So I'm just telling you what he said. I agree with it. I do like the Leonard Williams signing. I do agree that it's a bit of an overpay on the defense, but guess what? Sometimes you gotta, when a guy is talented, you gotta spend the money you need to get him, to sign him back. So, if it's a little bit of an overpay, so be it. As long as he's healthy and he produces, he's a critical piece to that defense. It'll work out. But the reason I downgraded it, because I do like a lot of the moves they made, was a lot of these guys they signed do have injury concerns, and I thought they could have spent some of this money that they spent other places, like on that offensive line, because the offensive line is probably still, I guess, the biggest weakness of this team, the biggest hole in this team. Daniel Jones was sacked 45 times last year. That's fourth most in the league, only behind Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, and Carson Wentz. So, I do think they could. Maybe their plan is to do that in the draft. Sure, that's fine. I do think you use some of this money to go out and get a veteran offensive line piece. Because there were pieces out there that you didn't have to necessarily spend, the whole house on, that you could have gotten for cheaper deals and brought in to kind of beef up this offensive line. I think they could have done that maybe a bit better, but otherwise it is a very solid offseason for the New York Giants.
Right, and they spent this money and they had to cut one of their linemen, which is concerning. And Daniel Jones, he's a type of quarterback that needs an elite offensive line to succeed. He's not a mobile quarterback. Obviously, he had that big run against the Eagles, and he tripped, and it was he's got wheels, but he's not a runner. Is the point? So, that's going to do it for the Giants here. Moving on to the New York Jets. Really good, solid signings with Carl Lawson and Corey Davis. I really like those moves. With Corey Davis, former top 10 pick with the Titans, has some injury history, but I think whether you continue with Sam Darnold or you move on, you get Zach Wilson or Justin Fields or one of these guys in the draft, you're giving them a guy who can separate. He has good speed and good size, and we'll see what he can do as a number one. Last year, these last couple of years, he was a little bit overshadowed by A.J. Brown, which, he still produced really well. But we'll see what he can do in this scheme as the number one guy. I'm really interested. Hopefully that goes well for them. And then Carl Lawson, another guy with a little bit of injury history, but one of the reasons I really liked it is because they already have a lot of depth at defensive line. So he can just go in on passing downs, third down and long, those type of downs, and he can just go get the passer. He doesn't have to play every down for this team. They got a lot of guys, Robert Seals-Jones. They have one guy that was a free agent. I forgot. I'm off on his name right now. I can't remember it, but and then of course they have the big guy in the middle, out of Alabama.
Keenan Williams.
Right. Him, Williams. So that D-line is already solid, and now they're adding another really good pass rusher who I think on any other team I would be a little bit pessimistic about his injury history, but with this team, I feel comfortable knowing that he's not going to play every snap and he's going to go in there situationally and he's going to be really effective. Then they signed Gerard Davis, linebacker, on a 1-year, $8 million deal. He's a solid blitzer. He's a really athletic guy, but they're really just betting on his potential here. He's not a finished product. But I like the move. But that's all I had written down for the Jets.
Yeah, I think the Jets had a really, really, really good free agency period, or at least first wave. as you mentioned, they upgraded their offensive weaponry with Corey Davis and Keelan Cole. So now they have a receiving core that consists of Corey Davis, really talented top 10 pick, Denzel Mims, the really talented pick from last year, and Keelan Cole. And am I forgetting of someone? I probably am, but they upgraded their offensive.
The guy from the not the football team a few years ago, he was the slot guy. They have a really solid slot guy in there. I can't think of his name. I'm really bad with names today.
It's all right. So they upgraded that, something good for Sam Darnold, some good, competent weapons to work with there. And they strengthened their defense. You mentioned the Carl Lawson signing, really good signing there. That's an A signing. He can come in on pass rush downs, get to the quarterback. He's been productive the past couple of years when he's not hurt. So there you go. I really like the Gerard Davis signing, the linebacker from Detroit. High upside, low risk, tight signing. That's going to at least give them some depth at that linebacker position. And then they bring in a guy like Lamarcus Joiner, a veteran safety, to go along with their franchise tag player and Marcus May. So they have a good safety tandem. They have some linebacker depth. They have a great defensive line, and they have some weapons on the outside. The question is at the quarterback position, and we'll see what they do here in the upcoming months, whether they trade Sam Darnold or they draft a quarterback to come in and compete with him during this draft. We'll see what happens, but that's really a question mark right now with the New York Jets. They still have their holes, sure, but they're starting to build this team, and I think what's his name, Joe Douglas, has done a really good job so far in his tenure. The question is just at the quarterback position. So I do like the Robert Salah hire. I think that'll work out. And the biggest move of the offseason was I guess getting rid of the other coach. but we won't get into that. Yeah, I think I'd give the Jets an A, probably an A minus. They still have their holes, but good signings, not great signings. Nothing that is going to change their franchise, but like Tom Brady did last year. But yeah, good depth pieces. A couple really good household names like Corey Davis and Carl Lawson, and some veterans to go along with it. That's what you need. You need leadership in the locker room.
Right.
So with that, let's move on. Let's go across the country. Actually, no, let's stay in the Northeast and talk about the New England Patriots.
Okay, right.
And then we'll go west to talk about the other teams. So, do you want me to start, or do you want to start?
I can start. Okay, so the Patriots, they brought back Cam Newton. Obviously, their quarterback from last year. They bring in Trent Brown. They bring him back. He's one of the guys that the Raiders cut. We'll get back to that later. They signed Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. I'll break this down a little bit later as well. I think those are really two really good signings. And then they signed Nelson Aguilar. A little bit of an overpay, but he's going to be their deep threat guy. He's going to stretch the defense a little bit, and at least it's going to be to where teams are going to have to respect it. These last couple of years, they haven't respected the receivers. They just press them. They give them no room, and none of the receivers could separate. Nelson Aguilar can do that, and he's going to get free if they don't give him the respect he deserves. So that's a good signing there. They signed Jalen Mills for the defense. Obviously, they signed Matt Judon as well. Really good defensive end. They bring back all of their opt-outs from last year, Hightower, all those guys. And wow, I really, really love this offseason. This was my favorite offseason out of everybody. This was just Bill Belichick. He's saying enough is enough. Like this was That last year was our reload year. This year we have cap space. Let's go for it. Let's build this team and let's go win. And I think this will work. Here's the formula. They're going to go 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets. They're going to pound the ball with Damian Harris. And they're just going to pound you to death over and over and over. They got guys who are going to be able to fight for tough yardage. Jonnu Smith is one of the best run after catch players in the league. And with this running game, there's going to be a lot of 3rd and 4s, 3rd and 3s. You got Cam Newton, one of the best short yardage players in the league. So I think this will work. They're going to play. They're going to control the clock. They're going to keep that time of possession on their side. They're going to keep the other team's offense off the field and just control the game. Their defense is going to be – they're going to get back to getting top 3 in the league. They're going to be scary with all the signings they made. I think this team, they could realistically make a run. I don't think that's an overreaction. I really don't. I honestly believe I don't think Cam Newton would work in any other situation, but with the way they're building this team, I think this is the perfect storm for Cam Newton.
I'm going to scale back a little bit. I still really think this is a really, really, really good offseason for the New England Patriots. I give it like a B+, more like an A-. I think let's start on the offense, and you hit it right on the head. The formula for the Patriots is going to be run the football a ton, use that to create play action over the middle with these 2 very good tight ends that they signed in, Jonnu Smith from the Tennessee Titans and Hunter Henry from the Chargers. Throw them over the middle, open things up on the outside with guys like Nelson Aguilar. And that's going to be the formula. And then they're going to play stingy defense. That's the formula for this Patriots team this offseason. It's pretty clear if you're not like a stupid football fan.
Hey, obviously you're watching this show, so you got a 100 IQ if you're watching the Raw Prospect podcast. You feel me?
Right. Upgraded talent on offense, as you mentioned. I love the Jonnu Smith signing. I think that's probably their best move. Well, actually, I take that back. I think re-signing the center, David Andrews, who's like a Pro Bowl caliber center, was their best move. But this was like their best outside move, if that makes sense. Getting a guy like Jonnu Smith, who's a Pro Bowl caliber tight end, and Hunter Henry, who's been injury prone, but very talented player. Hopefully he can stay healthy. That's going to make their offense way more dynamic than it was last year. It's going to help Cam Newton out, at least give him some competent weapons, because, N'Keal Harry hasn't panned out. Those guys haven't panned out. The guys they've drafted, they're not very good at drafting and developing skill position players. Let's be honest. As good as Belichick is, it's just not his specialty. That's okay. But they're very good at developing offensive line talent and defensive talent. The guys that they brought in, I think, will help on offense. They already have a very good 1-2 punch in that backfield. I think they brought back James White today. He's another piece out of that backfield who can catch passes, another safety blanket for Cam. I think last year was kind of a weird year for Cam. I think a lot of people, over criticized him.
Right. I think so too.
He had COVID in the middle, and after that he played well early in the season. And after that COVID stretch where he got the virus, got infected, came back after 2 weeks and just wasn't the same. I think he's still dealing with some side effects. I think he's going to be a lot better this year, as long as he stays healthy. That's, again, the big question with every team. So, and on defense, I like the moves. Pro Bowl caliber pass rusher in Matt Judon. I know that because my team has to face him twice a year when he was at Baltimore. So, he was a problem. with the Baltimore Ravens. Very good player there. They reunite with Kyle Van Noy, who played last year with the Miami Dolphins within the division. They bring him back, good veteran piece. I really love the Jalen Mills signing from the Eagles. Younger player, a lot of upside. They didn't pay him a ton of money, if I'm not mistaken. So I really like that. And they're gonna, as you mentioned, they're going to get back all those opt-outs, Hightower and everyone else. And Stephon Gilmore is still one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. So, yeah, I think they can be I'm going to say for now, a playoff team. I don't know about a Super Bowl team. That all depends on Cam Newton. But, yeah, I don't think they, barring injury to one of the Bills, I think the Bills also had a very good offseason, getting Emmanuel Sanders and some other pieces in there. I don't think they're beating out the Bills by any chance, but yeah, it can be and the Dolphins, they're still right there. They have a question at quarterback right now, but this division is not easy. The Jets are getting better. The Dolphins are getting better. The Bills are already Super Bowl caliber. So I'm going to hold off on the Super Bowl talk, but yeah, it's Belichick. So I'm not counting them out. They can definitely make a run at these playoffs, and who knows what happens when you get there.
Right. And one thing that gives me hope with Cam is that Seattle game from last year. Obviously, they lost the game, but in that game, he looked like MVP Cam. He reverted back to just slinging it all over the field. And obviously, like throughout his career, not even just last year, he's been a guy that's been really inconsistent. He's had, it seems like he plays really well in primetime games, and he struggles in like the regular run of the mill, just like 1 o'clock games,
Right.
But that game was really impressive, and he looked like he had the arm strength. And then boom, he gets COVID, and then we don't see that Cam again for the rest of the year. So,
right.
I think there's something there. I still think there's something there. I meant to say that they'd be like a underdog. I said it like them being a Super Bowl contender, like kind of like outside that range. I didn't mean like contender, but this formula that they have, I think it's going to work. Their offensive line is elite. Their defense is elite. And if you have those things and a really good running game, they're going to be tough to beat.
Yeah, they're going to be not necessarily, they've never been the most talented football team, but they're going to be really well coached, as they always have been. And they're going to be a balanced football team. They're going to be able to run. They're going to be able to throw now more effectively. And they're going to be a top 5, top 6 defense.
Right. I think they're going to add a receiver in the draft. And I think they do have the talent this year. They have one guy that nobody talks about is J.C. Jackson, opposite of Stephon Gilmore. He's quietly developed into a really, really good corner. They have one of the best corner duos in the league. And I think I could see them getting a Rondale Moore, Amari Rodgers, a guy like that, a Kadarius Toney. This wide receiver class is really good. So they add one more guy on offense, this team will be really good.
Right.
But I think may have digressed a little bit. But
let's move west and let's talk about a team I really like what they did this offseason. That's the Los Angeles Chargers. First of all, the problem with the Chargers but they upgraded on the offensive line and they surprised everyone when they signed Corey Linsley, the center from the Packers, who's young, and he was Pro Football Focus's, say what you want about Pro Football Focus, but he was the highest graded center in the entire NFL.
And first team
Pro Bowl caliber. Yep. Pro Bowl, All-Pro talent, young, doesn't get hurt a lot. That's huge because the offensive line is a weak spot. And they also brought in guard Matt Filer, who I'm familiar with, spent many years with the Steelers, great depth piece who's versatile. He can play guard or tackle. So I like that sign too. And they got him on the cheap, probably a little bit below his suggested market value. So 2 very good moves to beef up that offensive line pretty significantly, which they needed to do because Justin Herbert was pressured a league high 188 times last season, and he was sacked 32 times, which was the most among all the rookie quarterbacks, even more than Joe Burrow. So, and I know Burrow had the season-ending injury, but still. They do lose Hunter Henry and Casey Hayward at corner, but they re-signed one of their other corners. I'm blanking on his name, but you can look it up. He's an underrated. I think his name is Michael something. And I think they brought in another guy from the Browns. So they're still competent at corner, and they replaced Hunter Henry by signing Jared Cook, who's a very good tight end. So they're really not losing much there, and they still have a very talented team around Justin Herbert. So, the Chargers, I think they're still going to build that offensive lineup through this upcoming draft. I think that's what they'll be looking to do. I think they have the team. They have some players coming back from injury on that defense, I believe. Really? So that's going to be those are going to be big additions in themselves. I like what the Chargers are doing. I like the direction they're heading. Of course, we'll have to see how the new coaching situation works out, but I like this. I like where they're going. I think it's an A off season so far for the Chargers.
Right. Lindsley is a guy who I 100% expected the Packers to franchise tag. I was really surprised when they let him hit the open market. That was a huge pickup for them. Like I can't even underrate how important the center position is because they're the quarterback of the offensive line. They're the ones calling out the blitz coverages to the quarterback, and he communicates all the checks to his other guys. He's the quarterback of the offensive line, like I said. So bringing him in, that'll set the tone for the rest of the guys. And then obviously, like you said, Matt Filer, my bad.
Filer.
He, like you said, super versatile. You could even throw him at left tackle if you're not able to find that guy in the draft. That's completely an option. But I think they understand that they already have the guys on defense. I think they looked at themselves in the mirror and were like, okay, we have some guys on defense already. Let's protect Justin Herbert. He's our franchise guy. We can't win without him on the field. And that's whenever you're able to do that, and they did the self-reflection, they were able to act on it. That's good stuff. I was really happy with what they did. And I'm really excited, a little bit unrelated, but I'm really excited to see what Brandon Staley does with Derwin James. He's a guy that's so versatile, and he's just going to be – I think he might be in the running for Defensive Player of the Year next year. That's how highly I think of Derwin James. In that scheme, I am just over the moon to see what he's able to do. He's going to be a monster next year. So, yeah.
I want to move to two teams I didn't necessarily love what they did in the offseason. We talked about the teams that we kind of like what they did, the Patriots, the 2 New York teams, the Chargers, and the Buccaneers. But I want to jump to a team I like some of the moves they made, but they also lost a lot of players, and I didn't necessarily like the Tennessee Titans. Very interesting offseason for the Titans. Now, they did go out and get 2 pass rushers, which they really so badly needed to do, because that was the weakness of their team. They couldn't get to the quarterback at all. They finished with 19 sacks last year, which ranked third to last in the NFL. So they went out and got Danico Autry, a defensive end, very underrated defensive end from the Indianapolis Colts, and signed my guy from the Steelers, Bud Dupree, who's coming off an ACL, but they went out and secured him long-term, Pro Bowl caliber player. So they got 2 very good pass rushers, and that defensive line is going to be a lot better than it was last year. But at the same time, they lost some key pieces. I mean, Jonnu Smith is not an easy piece to replace. Corey Davis is replaceable, but you still would have liked to have kept him if you could. And I think they had to cut Adoree Jackson, a young, talented corner, who actually also signed with the Giants just a couple days ago, and some other pieces as well. I don't have them all written down because it was a long list, but nonetheless, you improved a weakness, but you also your roster, got degraded in some places as well. Now you're working with A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry, which isn't bad at all, but you'd like to have some depth at those positions. So I don't know about the Titans. I think it was good, but they lost a lot of pieces. I just don't know. The Colts are going to be, given that Carson Wentz returns to any sort of form of normalcy that we saw in like the 2017, 2018 years, given that Frank Reich can kind of repair some of his flaws that he's been dealing with the past couple of years, the Colts are going to be, I mean, they're going to be right up there with like the Bills and the Chiefs, in my opinion, in the AFC as contenders for the Super Bowl, because their defense is good, their offensive line is great, and they have some good weapons. They just re-signed T.Y. Hilton today, which was big. So I still think the Titans are probably second in this division. And who knows? I think they could still make the playoffs because they could play complementary football with Derrick Henry running the football, play action to A.J. Brown, and then get to the pass rusher or get to the rush to passer on the other side of the football. But I don't know. I don't like a lot of the pieces they lost. But maybe you have an opinion. Do you have anything you want to say?
Right. I think they had a plan for this offseason. I think here's why. I think obviously they signed Ryan Tannehill to that big deal a couple years ago. No, I think it was actually just last year, right? And obviously they have Derrick Henry on the big deal. So I think they went into this offseason knowing that if they don't make some tough cuts, they're going to be in cap hell for a long time. So I think this was they sacrificed right now for cap flexibility in the future, which is, I mean, it's okay. So obviously they traded their 2020 first round pick Isaiah Wilson for a 7th rounder. Obviously that didn't work out. He's had some off the field stuff. They released Kenny Vaccaro, released Malcolm Butler, Adoree Jackson, Dennis Kelly. So a lot of defensive guys. And then obviously they signed Bud Dupree, but they also signed Janoris Jenkins and Jayon Brown, two other defensive guys. So I think Janoris Jenkins, I think he's in that same category of corner as Adoree Jackson. A lot of the same skill set, just a little bit older and a little bit less upside. So I think they wanted to find that cheaper option, and they did that, which I think is a win because I don't think that's a downgrade. But obviously he's older, so the injury risk is a little bit higher because of that. And then Jayon Brown, 1 year, $5 million deal. super cheap, solid player for the defensive line, and their defensive line is set and ready to go for next year. I think they're going to be looking really good on that D line, and that was a place where they were lacking last year. So I think their thought was, this is a really good receiver draft. We're gonna get a couple receivers in the draft. We can refortify what we can, and we're just gonna develop the guys around our stars, and we're really gonna lean on our stars. I think depending on some of the guys they have in-house, whether they develop, and obviously they got to hit on their draft picks. That's going to be huge. They got to hit on draft picks this year, or else this could go very badly. But I like that they had a plan. So I'm going to be a little bit less harsh than maybe I would have on the next team we're going to do. They had a plan and they executed, and I think they're still in the mix of getting some of the replacements with the draft coming up.
Yeah, and I'm by no means saying they're not going to be a good football team. I still think they're going to be a viable playoff team, second in that division, I believe. But I still think, first of all, I think they have a top 5, top 6 head coach in Mike Vrabel, and that matters in the NFL. Coaching really matters above many other major league sports. Coaching matters more in football than it does in basketball and baseball. And that's just a fact. They have stars on the offense. Tannehill's good. He's really good. He's been really good since he arrived in Tennessee. Not elite, but he's really good. You can win games and get to the playoffs with him. We've seen him, just a couple of years ago, take this team to the AFC Championship. So you can even win playoff games with them. I don't know about win a Super Bowl, but you can do some really, really good stuff with Ryan Tannehill. And they have stars, Derrick Henry, the biggest, and then A.J. Brown, who's fantastic. Probably a top 10 receiver, if you ask me. And I think their pass rush is more than any team, I think they significantly upgraded their pass rush. And what do you have to do in today's NFL? You have to get a great quarterback, protect the quarterback, and then get to the other team's quarterback. That's kind of a solid formula for winning in today's league, and that's what they're going to be able to do. So I think they'll be a playoff team. Maybe it was just, sometimes your cap situation doesn't allow you to sign players, but I didn't like losing Jonnu Smith. I think given that I've seen other teams, do creative cap maneuvering, like the Patriots and the Buccaneers, I think you could have figured out a way to maybe get him back, but sometimes things don't work out. And I still have my questions about their secondary, although I do like the signing you mentioned, Janoris Jenkins.
Right.
I do like that. That's something I didn't mention, but yeah, I have my questions. I think they could have done a little bit better, but they're still going to they'll probably be a playoff team, given that they stay healthy and they hit on 1 or 2 draft picks, maybe a receiver and then a corner or a secondary piece. And who knows? There's still cornerbacks out there on the market. They could go out and get a veteran piece like Richard Sherman or someone like that, Garrett Conley. There are still some very good corners out there that they could go and sign. So it's not over yet. I just have a couple questions for them. But let's move on. The Raiders, our last team. Oh, my goodness. Our last team. So you go first.
Oh, my goodness. The Raiders. Oh, man. If you're a Raiders fan, put on your seatbelt because I'm about to roast the crap out of your team right now. I'm sorry to my friend Connor Larkin. He's the only Raiders fan that I actually know. But Raiders fans out there, I'm sorry, but this, oh my goodness. This front office, I think they might be the worst in football currently.
Whoa, worse than
Yep,
Houston?
yep. I really do. I think Houston actually. Well, I said currently. Like Houston actually made some pretty good moves this offseason with the hands they were dealt. But obviously, Bill O'Brien left, and I think Houston's moving in a better direction. But right now, Oakland is the worst. I think they were the second worst for a while, but now they're the worst. I'm gonna make some key points here. So they began the offseason basically paying for all of the bad signings that they made in the 2019 offseason 2 years ago. They had to release Tyrell Williams. They overpaid him. They released Trent Brown, who was the only good signing they really made. But obviously they released a lot of their offensive line guys. I'll get back to that in a little bit. They released Lamarcus Joiner, who they paid top dollar at the safety position, but they played him at slot corner for some reason. And I don't know why, because slot corner is one of the cheapest positions to find, and he's not even good at slot corner. He's a safety. They signed him to be a safety. I don't know why they played him at slot corner. That made no sense to me. They overpaid him, and they played him at the wrong position on top of that. And then on top of everything, they got rid of everyone on the offensive line, basically. Rodney Hudson, one of the best centers in the league. They got rid of Richie Incognito. They got rid of Trent Williams. And now this team is just left in shambles. I think this is like the Khalil Mack situation all over again. I think this is just John Gruden's ego getting in the way of them building a team. I think his feelings got hurt for whatever reason. Maybe the O-line was getting on his nerves somehow, and he just said, "Screw all y'all, get out of here." And they just cut him for no reason. They had one of the best offensive lines in the league last year. It made no sense. Oh my goodness. I think the only two moves that I say like were good these past couple of years were keeping Darren Waller and getting Richie Incognito, who they just cut. The Khalil Mack trade, in hindsight, that was he was severely undervalued. They only got a first round pick and a first and second pick swap, so they didn't get 2 firsts outright. And then looking back, Jamal Adams got 2 or 3 firsts for his deal. So that feels like they got fleeced there. Oh my goodness. The Raiders, like y'all like really had a good thing going. Y'all had hope, and then you missed on your draft picks in 2019. You had a lot of first round picks, and then you had a solid team last year, and then you just go and get rid of all your centers, all your linemen. I don't know why I said centers, but I want to see what you think about it. Maybe I'm overreacting, but I honestly think like I just don't understand why you just wake up one day and then you just decide, oh, I'm going to get rid of my linemen. And on top of it also, they announced they were releasing Rodney Hudson, which just killed his trade value because everybody in the league knew we're desperate to get rid of him. So they gave him up for a 5th round pick. If they had just been patient and just like searched the trade market properly, they could have easily gotten like a good pick, like a second, or maybe even, well, probably not a first, but they could have gotten a lot more value out of that. It just, oh my goodness.
Well, I would refrain from saying they're the worst front office in the league. I did look it up. They did actually re-sign Richie Incognito today.
Oh, okay. So they released him and they re-signed him. Okay, that makes it a little bit better. Okay.
I will say I do agree with you. I don't like the moves they made on the offensive line. Otherwise, I don't like getting rid of Rodney Hudson, a top center in the league. I don't like that, but I do think they made some good moves. Maybe not great moves, but I think They upgraded at pass rusher, getting Yannick Ngakoue, getting him for pretty cheap.
Yeah, that was a good move.
Compared to other, pass rushers that were signed this offseason. They got him on the cheap, and he's a Pro Bowl type player. They could have spent this money better, sure, but they did add depth at running back, getting Kenyon Drake. I do like that move. Well, you could use that money elsewhere, sure, but I like adding depth behind the running back they have now. So they have two really good running backs. And I like the move for Jayon Brown, one of the better, slot corners, whatever you want to call him in the league right now. I like some of the moves they made there, giving Derek Carr a couple more weapons. But then again, it all comes back to the offensive line. I think the problem with the Raiders isn't so much the front office, it's Jon Gruden. That's the problem with the Raiders.
Yeah, maybe so, yeah.
You look at his teams, what has it been, 2 or 3 years in Oakland, and they've just they've been in the running, but then once Thanksgiving hits, and this is another thing Colin Cowherd talks about all the time, is once Thanksgiving hits, Jon Gruden teams collapse. They're terrible after Thanksgiving. And you can go look up Colin Cowherd's videos. Just Google on YouTube Colin Cowherd, Jon Gruden, and he'll lay it all out for you. They're absolutely awful after Thanksgiving. That coaching staff fails to make any adjustments. I don't know what it is, but they just collapsed after Thanksgiving. And Jon Gruden is like a 500 coach, aside from that Super Bowl year, where he basically inherited a very, very good team with Tampa Bay. I mean, he inherited a all-time defense, and then he just inherited a very good team and happened to get some luck and take him to the Super Bowl. Otherwise, he's been an coach. I think, as you said, I think his ego sometimes gets in the way. He's getting paid a ton of money. I think the problem is with Jon Gruden. I'm not saying he's a bad coach. He's obviously, been to a Super Bowl, although it was like 15, 18 years ago. And he's had some good teams and, had some good years, obviously. But I think the problem lies with the coaching staff and Jon Gruden. Maybe some of it is management. I think a big thing for the Raiders is going to be their draft this year. I'm not familiar with where they are positioned in the draft, but I think, I don't know. They signed Jon Gruden to that huge contract, and so far, he's been decent. But after Thanksgiving, which is when it really matters, and that's when that's when the Bucs hit their stride. It was right around Thanksgiving, right after that late bye week. That's when they hit their stride, and they didn't lose a game. They didn't look back afterwards. You got to be good at late in-season adjustments. You got to be able to deal with injuries and all that stuff. And Jon Gruden just hasn't done a good job of that. So we could sit here and argue all day about who is the worst, coach and who's the worst front office and all that. I think it may be a little bit of an overreaction. But yeah, I don't love their off season, but I've seen worse off seasons in league history than this, way worse. So I don't know. I think they can still be a competent team. There's still time left. Free agency isn't over. They could still go out and get some pieces. I'm not going to overreact, but yeah, I don't love it, but I'm not gonna say I hate it. So that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I'm gonna backtrack a little bit, but seeing what they did in the offseason, I don't know, it just made me kind of feel for Raiders fans a lot. It kind of infuriated me a little bit, like seeing them tear down this team again. Jon Gruden just seems to like what he did when he first got there, obviously trading Amari Cooper and Khalil Mack, and now trading his offensive lineman, specifically a star center, Rodney Hudson. I feel like there might be something to that. He might just have a problem with he's so old school to where maybe he just has a problem with guys with egos. I don't know.
But,
yeah.
Well, regardless of what they did this offseason, they weren't winning this division.
Right.
You look at the Chiefs, obviously, and then you have a up-and-coming Chargers team. And then who's the other team?
The Broncos.
The Broncos. They suck. But
otherwise, they made some good signings. They actually signed Kyle Fuller, but their question is at quarterback, which is you know. So
until they get a quarterback, they stink. Because Drew Lock isn't it. So with that, yeah, that's going to do it unless you have any. I do think other teams had good off seasons.
Right.
The Browns had a very good free agency period,
mm-hmm.
upgrading in that secondary, which is good. They got
the Cardinals as well.
Johnson. The Cardinals did too. So yeah, other teams had good off seasons, but these are the teams that we wanted to talk about right now because they were the teams that were the most. What was the word you used earlier?
Intriguing.
Yeah, whatever.
Polarizing, so, I guess.
If more signings or trades come in, we'll definitely talk about them. But for now, that's probably going to do it for our NFL free agency talk. And we'll start to transition into our draft season talk.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that.
We're about a month away now from the draft, and it's a loaded draft. So
yeah,
we'll get into that here very soon. But something on the more immediate horizon, like meaning tomorrow, is the NBA trading deadline. And so far, it's been pretty slow. But that doesn't mean that we can't get like a frenzy of moves here in the next 20 hours or so. I don't know. I think it's 3 p.m. Eastern, so that's really 17 hours from now.
Right.
So that doesn't mean we've seen it before. We can get a frenzy of moves right before the deadline. And I'm actually going to check to make sure nothing has dropped during the podcast because that's happened previously with NFL actually. But yeah. So for this segment, we just came up with 2 or 3 theoretical trades for actual trade targets. These aren't, at least for me, actual rumored to be trade targets on the market. So we're going to talk about them, and then we'll wrap this thing up. So do you want me to start, or do you want to start?
I'll start it off. A couple of my trades were ones that I made. A couple of them were ones that I that intrigued me that I saw off the internet. So this first one is one that I made. It's going to be Celtics getting Harrison Barnes and Rashawn Holmes, and in return, the Kings receive Romeo Langford, Tristan Thompson, Carson Edwards, and a 2021 lottery protected first. So for the Kings, they get the young guy in Langford, young guard with some upside. And they basically get the pick as a consolation prize for taking in that Tristan Thompson money. I don't think the Celtics want him anymore. That move's basically been a bust. He hasn't been terrible, but I just don't think he fits what they need. They need a big that can hold down the middle, and he's not that guy anymore. Obviously, and then for the Celtics, they address that need by getting Rashawn Holmes, a guy that I really like. And they also get Harrison Barnes, which addresses, I think, their biggest need, which is when Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are off the floor, this team is anemic. They don't have a lot of depth, and their scoring punch off the bench is really non-existent now that Gordon Hayward is gone. So I think that's their biggest weakness, just some scoring off the bench. So you throw Barnes into that bench, and then you throw Holmes in that starting lineup. You still have Williams. You still have Tice in that big man room. That's an upgrade. So I think it's good for both sides, but I would definitely question if the Celtics would want to give up on Romeo Langford. But if they were to, I think this would be a good move.
Yeah, I agree. I really like Harrison Barnes. He's getting overlooked in Sacramento, but I think he could really help this team, as you said, for all the points that you made. I think the biggest question for the Celtics is first of all, what young players what young assets do they really have to use in trades that they're willing to part with, and what do they want to do with them? Is it going out to get Harrison Barnes? I think that would be a good move. But they're also rumored to be front runners for the power forward for the Orlando Magic, Aaron Gordon. My first trade had to do with Aaron Gordon, and the two rumored teams to be front runners are the Boston Celtics and the Denver Nuggets. So Boston Celtics right now are the reported front runners, but I did a trade, or I saw this trade, and I want to see what you think of it, for the Nuggets to get Aaron Gordon. I think he could help them. You talk about, so the trade is the Nuggets get Aaron Gordon and a center, backup caliber center. His name's Kim Birch. I think he's been pretty good for them. I don't watch Magic games, so I don't know, but that's what they get. He's a younger center. So the Nuggets get him and Aaron Gordon. And the Magic would receive Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, and a first-round pick this year. Now, I don't know what you think of Aaron Gordon. I think he's a really good player. I think he'd go really well with Jokic on the offensive end. I don't know what the questions are with him. I don't watch a lot of Magic games, as I just said. But I think the question here is, first of all, how desperate are the Nuggets to get a piece like this? I think the Celtics could potentially be more desperate, and that could potentially play a role because right now they're sitting below 500 in the Eastern Conference, and they just lost again tonight to the Bucks. And the Nuggets are actually sitting 9 games above 500. So if they pull this move off, I think they get better on offense. And, well, I don't know much about Aaron Gordon defensively. Maybe you can tell me something more about that. But I think the question here is, are the Nuggets willing to part with that younger piece in RJ Hampton? You throw in Gary Harris just to match salaries, and you have to. The question is, do they want to part with that younger piece? Because we know they're not going to trade Michael Porter Jr. So it's got to be RJ Hampton or Bull, something along those lines.
Right.
But I like it for the Magic. I like it because they do get a veteran shooting guard, Gary Harris. They get a young player in RJ Hampton and a first-round pick. So I want to know what you think.
Well, I do think Aaron Gordon would fit into that Jeremy Grant role that he played last year for the Nuggets, a guy who's a solid defensive player. He's really switchable. That's his biggest attribute. I think he's actually a guy that can play some small ball center. The Magic haven't really experimented with that, but I actually think he could be really solid as a small ball center. Obviously, on the Nuggets, you don't really need that, but he can do that. But he's it's tough with Aaron Gordon because he's a guy to where you're not really sure what his shooting will be on a new team, because one or two things could happen. You end up maybe he just ends up doing catch and shoot more, and he hits his shots, or he just continues to do what he's doing. He's not that efficient of a player. I think everybody's just assuming that because he's one of the focal points for the Magic, that he can be a lot more efficient if he got more open looks and he was more of a complementary piece. And I think there's an argument to be made there, but I think the biggest fear for the Nuggets is the fact that it's not certain. I think maybe a guy like Oladipo or maybe I don't know. It's tough because you obviously need to fill that Jeremy Grant hole. That's their biggest hole on the team. But I don't know if I'd give up on RJ Hampton just yet. I think that's a really risky move.
Yeah, maybe I don't know what the Magic value. I know they want a young player and a high or a first round pick,
right?
And you just have to throw in an expiring salary or a veteran contract to match the salaries. So that's how you get to Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, and or Bol and the first round pick. And whether you think that's fair value or not for Aaron Gordon is, an argument for another day. But I think he'd go along well with a passing big, a very, very, very good passing big, maybe the best of all time in Nikola Jokic, who's having an MVP caliber season. I think he'd improve their team offensively. And I think, as you said, the switchability factor would be big on defense. But I'm kind of skeptical on he requested a trade, so maybe that gives him some leverage. I don't know. I think they have to trade him now that he made it public, but we'll see with the Magic. I just don't know what to expect from them.
Right. I think the Magic have been in purgatory so long. They need to do something to switch things up. I've been waiting for years for them to really dive deep into the younger guys and just buy into them, but they haven't done it. And I think if you're the Nuggets, I think if the Magic want to be a selling team and they want to build around their younger guys, I think if you are able to throw in maybe a Michael Carter-Williams, like a defensive piece like that, or maybe a Terrence Ross in that deal. I don't know how the salaries would work, but if you're able to get a guy like that, I think I would do it. Just simply from the fact that depth is important, and I don't think Denver is where they want to be in terms of depth. But you're also losing Gary Harris, so maybe that's just you just have to ask yourself, is Aaron Gordon better than Gary Harris? I think that's actually debatable.
Right.
So that's tough.
Yeah. Okay. Well, do you have another trade?
Right. Yes, I do. So the next trade is not one that I made, but it was one that I saw online. It's going to be the New York Knicks going out and getting Lonzo Ball and JJ Redick, and the Pelicans getting Austin Rivers, Elfrid Payton, Kevin Knox, and a 2023 unprotected Dallas first-round pick. So I found this intriguing. I don't know if this is overly realistic, but I found this intriguing because I just thinking of Lonzo and RJ Barrett together, I really like that fit. And obviously, it would all depend on whether you could re-sign Lonzo. And obviously, he's a restricted free agent, so I don't think that should be a problem. But for the Pelicans, it really just depends on whether you want to bring Lonzo back or not. I think personally, I would bring him back. What he's been doing lately has been really, really good. He's still a really good defender, and his shot is improving year to year, which is a really good sign. So I think he's a guy that might just be a late bloomer. He's still improving and he's still ascending. And he still fits the timeline of this team. So I just don't think you're getting enough of you're not getting enough of a sure thing back in return, because we don't know what Kevin Knox is. Austin Rivers is just a placeholder. And Elfrid Payton, I don't even know if he'd get minutes on this team. So you're throwing away – they're basically throwing away the chance of making the play-in this season if you do this trade. And you're also betting on yourself being able to hit on that pick, which could be it might be a 25th pick, or it might be maybe all the guys on Dallas get hurt and it's like a top 5 pick. Who knows? It's unprotected. So really it would be a risky move for the Pelicans.
What do you think about Lonzo Ball and the Clippers?
I think that would work really well, but if you're the Clippers, what the heck do you give up? You traded the house and some to get Paul George, so you really don't have that many young pieces. Maybe you could do something with Zubats. I wonder what value Serge Ibaka would have. Maybe you could do like a swap with Steven Adams and Serge Ibaka, because obviously the Pelicans need a floor spacing center, and Serge Ibaka would bring that.
I was just wondering. Didn't mean to put
I just don't know what they would give up. I think it's a really good fit, though.
Yeah, I do too. I saw trades, and this isn't my next one, but I saw trades rumored. Well, first of all, I saw the Clippers were rumored to be in the market for Lonzo Ball, and they were looking at involving multiple teams. It'd be a multi-team deal beyond just the two, so they could get the Pelicans could get fair trade value for Lonzo, because I don't think the Clippers could give it to them themselves, given that they gave up all those first-round picks. I think their next first-round pick is like, I don't know, 6 years from now, if I'm not mistaken. So they don't have a lot to give up in terms of young players and assets. It'd have to be the Pelicans would have to accept like I think like a Lou Williams or a Patrick Beverly, and like I think Patrick Patterson and that 2027 first round pick, which I don't think they can part with just yet. So I'm not sure if they could do it unless it was a multi-team deal, but that's just something I saw on the internet.
Right. And another team that he would fit really well on is the Bulls. That's a really interesting team there. They need a point guard.
And they have
Kobe White, he's a scoring guard. So
and they could give the Pelicans marketing. He's a full season big. That could maybe work.
That could be interesting. I just don't think marketing is good defensively. Like if he was even passable defensively, I think the Pelicans would really consider that. But the Pelicans are already bad enough on defense to where that would be a tough sell for me. I think if I'm the Pelicans, I'd want Wendell Carter.
Yeah, it'd be a good fit for sure. Talking about a creator of offense and Lonzo Ball to go along with more of a scorer in Kobe White. I think that'd be a good young tandem in that backcourt.
Right. I think Kobe White would be a really, really good sixth man. Then you have Zach LaVine. So
right. But yeah, I forgot. How could I forget? So yeah, I agree. But I want to talk about maybe the biggest name on the trade market right now is Kyle Lowry of the Toronto Raptors. Now the two teams rumored to be the front runners for his services right now are the Philadelphia 76ers, who I think is a great fit for him, and the Miami Heat, who some people are skeptical of that fit, but I have a trade that I saw. Now I think the reports by Adrian Wojnarowski and everyone else say that the thing that's holding this trade back from actually going through and being a done deal is the Heat don't want to get rid of Tyler Hero, number one. And number two, they're still on whether they want to part with another one of their young pieces like Duncan Robinson. But in this trade, I have them giving up Duncan Robinson, Goran Dragic, Kelly Olynyk, in a pick swap. I don't know what it would be. It'd be some type of pick swap for Kyle Lowry. We know, or I know at least, from reading articles on The Athletic, because that's what I spend half my day doing, that it's been reported that Kyle Lowry already has a very good, well-established relationship with Jimmy Butler. They're both kind of the same. They both have kind of the same goals, the same mindset when it comes to basketball. They're both dogs on defense. They both want to win. They both, they both have kind of the same redeeming qualities. And I think for the Heat, it's really about whether or not you think Goran Dragic can still be the same player that he was in last year's playoffs before he eventually got hurt. Because if he can be that player, I'm not sure you want to part with Dragic just to get a player that's, I think, a little bit older and Lowry.
Right.
So I'm not sure they want to do that. But if they don't think that Dragic can be the same player that he was in last year's playoffs for whatever reason, because Miami's offense has been stagnant at times this season, like early on especially. And so if they don't think he can be that player, they could throw him in this deal to get definitely an upgrade, an all-star caliber, still talent like Kyle Lowry, who's a very good defender, like Jimmy Butler is, and can take some of the offensive load off Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. He can be that third piece there. And for the Raptors, you get a good point guard back in Dragic. As long as he's healthy, he's still a good point guard. And you get some much needed center depth with Kelly Olynyk, and you get a pick swap. And you get that young player you want in Duncan Robinson. I think it's beneficial for both sides, but the thing is, the Heat don't seem to want to get rid of Hero. Well, I know they're not getting rid of Hero, but they don't want to get rid of Duncan Robinson or any other young pieces. Maybe, Kendrick Nunn could be thrown in this deal. I don't know. There's a bunch of ways you could work it out, but I think it's interesting. Lowry has the connection to Jimmy Butler, but also I think when you talk about the Philadelphia 76ers, that's probably the better fit. But I don't know. What do you think?
I actually think one thing that crossed my mind when you were talking there is maybe they can throw that deal at the Pelicans for Lonzo Ball. What do you think of that?
That might be interesting. He's a cheaper player, a younger player. You still have to pay him here upcoming, but I don't think that'd be a problem. And the Pelicans get fair value. I mean, you could get maybe a first round or some type of pick swap. You get a shooter like Duncan Robinson. I didn't think of that. That same package for a cheaper, younger, possibly more talented player, just in terms of pure, talent. That might be a better move for Miami.
Right, and I think maybe you give the Heat J.J. Redick because Duncan Robinson is basically a younger version of J.J. Redick, in my opinion. So I think that could work. That I don't think a lot of people are talking about Miami as a suitor for Lonzo, but that actually crossed my mind, and like I can't even think of a reason why they wouldn't do that. So
that's interesting. But I do think that the Sixers right now, I think they're reported favorites and he would definitely. I mean, you're talking about a guy in Lowry who, I mean, I think the Sixers need another player who can create offense for himself while not sacrificing on the defensive end. And he's you're not going to find, I guess, a more dangerous threat to make the Sixers to their opposition than Kyle Lowry right now. So that's all I really have to say. Those were my three kind of trade targets. Gordon, Lowry, and Ball. I think those are the three biggest names I'm looking for. But do you have anything else?
We got a trade alert. We got a Wojblom.
Oh God.
We got a real blockbuster here. All right, so hang in there. We got DeLon Wright for Corey Joseph and 2 second-round picks. Oh my goodness, that's a blockbuster right there. But obviously, I'm kidding. But
yeah.
I don't even know what kind of deal that is. I don't even know if that's an upgrade for the Kings, but not relevant. Sorry, what'd you ask me?
Oh, I just saying I pretty much brought up everything I really had in terms of this segment. Aaron Gordon obviously is an interesting deal. Kyle Lowry is an interesting situation. And Lonzo Ball is maybe the most intriguing name right now. I don't know if
right.
But do you have any other trades you?
Oh, right. I have one more.
Okay.
This one I'm a little bit more skeptical of, but it's interesting nonetheless. So it's RJ Hampton and Gary Harris straight up for Victor Oladipo. This one is really risky because Victor Oladipo, we don't know if he's going to get back to being that guy anytime soon. I think maybe he's not playing as well in Houston because he's not in a good situation, and maybe he's feeling a little bit tired and a little bit down on himself. That seems to happen when you're on a bad team. And maybe you just get re-energized being on a new team, but it would still be a really risky move. And I debated just scratching this one and just not talking about it on the pod, but I think this trade really goes straight into the conversation of what is Victor Oladipo's value exactly, because really I don't know. It's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, we haven't seen really Victor Oladipo play a ton of basketball at all. Right. And he's been stuck in that terrible situation in Houston. They lost 20 straight games. I don't really know what to think of him at this point. I still think he's a really good player, or he can be when he's healthy. But that's another name that's out there that you really don't know what to think of. I don't know what's going to happen. So, I mean, I really don't have a whole lot to say there, but it's really all I have. I'm kind of running out of gas now.
Right. I just find it so interesting this year, the trade deadline, because we have I think this is the first year in a long time where I don't think there's any teams that are actually tanking in the official sense of the word. Even the teams that are bad, I don't even know if they're really tanking. The Timberwolves, they're still the last few games, with their new coach, they've been playing solid, which is a lot better than what they were early in the year. And obviously they don't even have their pick, so they have no incentive to play badly. And then obviously the Thunder, we expected them to tank. But up until now, they're one of the best defensive teams in the league, and they're playing really solid overall. And then teams that we expected to be bad, they've actually won games every once in a while. The Pistons, they've beaten the Lakers, and I think they've beat a bunch of the elite teams for some reason. I don't know why or how, but that's interesting. But my point being is that I think there's a lot of teams that have trade pieces that know they're not going to make the playoffs. The Rockets, the Thunder, the Pistons even have a couple guys. The Kings, obviously. And it's going to make this trade deadline really, really interesting. I saw a report that said that Woj is expecting 15 to 20 trades before the trade deadline. So we could be in for a wild one these next few hours.
That's the frenzy that I was talking about when we started this segment that we could still see. But another factor in this is the buyout market.
Right.
You're going to have some good names out there, especially, big men, names like Andre Drummond, potentially a LaMarcus Aldridge, veteran names that could be out there in the buyout market. So that's another factor. I'm obviously a huge Spurs fan. I saw this report. The New York Knicks have been looking to make some kind of splash for what seems like forever. That day may be finally here. New York is involved with a number of players, but acquiring DeMar DeRozan is near the top of its wish list. He's a consistent scorer. He's durable, and he would provide the veteran presence the Knicks are intent on adding to the mix to solidify their presence as a playoff contender and a team on the rise. Saw that. I just saw that. Now I highly doubt the Spurs are going to actually trade him, just given their history at the trade deadline. And DeMar seems to be in a good place right now, given that they're in the playoffs as of now. I think they're 3 or 4 games above 500. They're winning. He likes a lot of young pieces around him. I'm not going to drag this out too much longer, but it's going to be interesting. For the first time in a long time, I'm actually sort of intrigued by what this trade deadline is going to bring for the Spurs.
Right. The Spurs have always been a quiet team.
Yeah. Yep. Always. So, we'll see what happens. I think that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Raw Prospect Podcast, episode 61. And before we sign off, I just want to say, as I mentioned in the beginning, it is an absolutely insane time to be a sports fan and a sports podcaster like we are. I mentioned NFL free agency, NFL draft, NBA trade deadline, the rest of the NBA season, MLB opening day, major season in golf, the Masters, March Madness, everything. What does that mean for us? That means we're going to be doing a lot of podcasts here in the upcoming weeks. So stay tuned to our channel, like, subscribe, do all that jazz, and we'll be back possibly in a couple days for another episode.
And spread the word. Share it with your friends if you enjoy the content. Over these next few weeks, I'm really excited for the draft stuff. Like I said earlier, I have been doing a lot of studying, so to speak. I've been looking into these guys in this class, and I'm really excited to share with you guys what I've learned. And yeah, that's gonna do it, guys. Thank you for watching. Oh,
what do you notice about this podcast? No technical difficulties.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's a new one.
Hopefully that can continue.
Right.
So that was just something that came to mind. But
right. There were a couple of times where your voice cut out, but no freezes or anything like that. So it turned out good, guys. Hopefully that can be a trend. That's gonna do it. Peace out, y'all. I'm gonna go eat some food. I'm hungry.
Same here. Peace out. See y'all soon.